Well, I'm the current president of the Sub-Saharan Africa Chamber of Commerce. With me today presenting will be with Ms. Sheilah Njalaleh, and she'll really walk us through the market strategy for businesses seeking to capitalize on AGOA during our session today. In addition to Sheila, Vuyo Dunjwa, who's our current chair of our board, will also be joining in our chat. Now, the Chamber of Commerce is an organization that is really at the nexus of doing business between Sub Saharan Africa and the US. And we run multiple trade missions, we run very focused and strategic discussions, roundtables on given topics, such as in this case, AGOA. We also host various conferences that directly speak to the need to increase trade and investment around the relationship between Sub-Saharan Africa and the US. We play a pivotal role in developing strategic partnerships between companies, organizations, and even public sector, and run sector specific meetings to meet the needs of our members. We also actively engage in B2B matchmaking. These sometimes are ad hoc, depending on the needs of our members, or very specific following our conferences and sector specific meetings. The Chamber also engages in significant market and policy research, and we disseminate this information typically through newsletters, through our website, and also from the conferences and uh, trips that we take within the US and also in Sub Saharan Africa. We've worked in multiple Sub Saharan African countries, not only with AGOA, but in IT, in banking, definitely in agriculture, around the business of renewable energy, and a host of other areas. But today, our interest is really in having this conversation around capitalizing on AGOA and specifically looking at market strategy. This is the second of four series on.
Good morning. My name is Sheilah Njalaleh. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be discussing market strategy to assist businesses take advantage of AGOA, as Christine had mentioned before. We'll look at four main points, which are the looking at how an export plan should look like and basic costs of exporting, market access strategy, and writing an export contract. Then we'll also take a look at a business that's been very successful in using AGOA. To start with, we do have an AGOA framework at the Chamber, and the framework has five main topics in it, which is Introduction to AGOA and Gauging Business Preparedness, which was covered in the first webinar that we had. This is the second webinar, which will be covering market strategy, and we do have a financial compliance and a law compliance webinar coming up. Developing an export plan. So, what is an export plan? An export plan should resemble your business plan, but it should have more emphasis on the US market conditions. We specify on the US market conditions because for you to be able to take advantage of AGOA, you have to be exporting to the US. And it's very, very important for you to understand that you need to be compliant with what the market conditions here are and the laws of the land. So your Excel plan should have a preview of your market research, a study of your products and their stability for your target market, and organization of your export activities. The last point is very, very important since it has a lot in there, and I'm going to talk more about that. How to organize your export activities. The first thing you need to do is have an overview of entrance methods, including the shipping, transportation, logistics, promotion, and distribution. You should also have an analysis of US import procedure and your compliance strategy, as I had mentioned before. So you should also have your business financial plans. It's very important to have these all set out before you even start the export process. While developing an export plan, you should consider 12 basic costs of exporting. The first one is third party costs like US custom brokers, freight forwarders, and legal counsel, which you would not have incurred if you were not exporting. So, this will be a bit of a difference from your regular business plan. Then the second is the production modification required to meet US regulations or customer demands. You might have products that are being used here or where your company is in whichever country you come from. But since a US has specific requirements for its products and regulations, this is another cost that you need to think about. Then there'll be the higher packaging costs to meet the greater distances, regardless of if you have all your things packaged the way you usually package them in your regular businesses. Then you should also think about the insurance and cost of time delays since your goods will be moving at a distance, usually that you don't have to move. Then there's the price trends for your products, there's the exchange rate fluctuations, and the expense of business travel. So, market strategy. In our market strategy, we have three main ways to determine it. Market access, and this is how you're going to get into the US and how you're going to conduct your business in the US. So we have the direct selling, then we have using intermediaries, and we have forming strategic alliances. I'll be going through each one separately and just talking a little bit in detail about each. So there's the direct selling. What's direct selling? It can be achieved by establishing a formal US presence, by opening a branch or incorporating a subsidiary. Usually, this is for businesses that are a bit bigger, the medium sized to big businesses. The smaller businesses might have a bit of a problem investing in actually opening a whole branch in the US. So, you can also use remote sales like using catalogs, mail, electronic businesses, or filing orders through trade shows. Now, this one is geared towards the smaller businesses, and a good example is our success story today that we'll be talking about later. They actually make very good use of trade shows and using mail, catalogs, and electronic businesses. Then there's the using intermediaries. Intermediaries are distributors, trading houses, or representatives or agents. Intermediaries have the pluses and the nays, and one of the main pros is that your business gains immediate access without owning the operation. So that means you don't incur the costs of location or having to pay costs on ground. But disadvantage is estrangement from the customer base and lack of direct control of your product marketing. This means that your agents, you rely on the trading houses, representatives, and agents a lot on how your product is going to be marketed and how your customer base is going to be controlled. So it's a give and take with using intermediaries. Then there's the strategic alliances. Strategic alliances are the most important part of it is carrying due diligence, and this means you have to do your homework and you have to really understand what deals you're getting into and the people you're working with and the contracts that you're going to be signing. There are 6 options for forming strategic alliances, and the first one is licensing. Licensing is granting another business the rights to legally use your company, proprietary technology, and or intellectual property. So in licensing, it's good to definitely look over your paperwork, make sure everything is detailed and explained so that in future you don't have to deal with lawsuits or someone taking advantage of you or you totally losing your whole business. You have to be very careful. Then there's the franchising, which is a more specific way of licensing. And usually it's the bigger businesses again who can actually venture in these two domains. Cross licensing is when firms license products or services to other firms for sales purposes. Actually, small businesses can attempt cross licensing because you can do your due diligence, do your research, find out businesses that are working in conjunction with or towards goals and products that you work with, and you can come up with deals of how they can carry your products, help you get into the markets, sometimes even just sell your stuff, or you can sell to them, then they sell to the consumers. Then there's co-marketing. It allows companies to take advantage of each other's existing markets. This is amazing in businesses that are doing well here in the United States and in other countries, I mean African countries, where your African goods can be marketed here by the business that you have a contract with here, and you can do the same for them on the other side. So each of you can take advantage of each other's bases, customer bases, networks, and establishments. So strategic alliances. The fifth one is co-production. This agreement involves the joint production of goods allowing each company to leverage its strengths along the supply chain. Many upcoming export companies do this, especially since they're getting the raw materials from the African companies, so they can work out deals of co-production. Then there's joint venture. Joint venture is the US legal context. This is collaboration of two companies carrying out a particular individual project. And in joint ventures, it's important to note that the venture has only the lifespan of the project and is governed by the partnership laws of the state where it originated. So if you're working in different states, the joint ventures, you have to be careful and make sure that you're covered in all states because some of the states might have different laws of how to go about doing business. So we come to the last main point, which is writing an export contract. And writing an export contract is actually just like writing a regular business contract, but I'll just point out 12 points that you should at least make sure are in your contract to cover your bases and make sure you're being compliant and you're keeping yourself safe. So the first thing that you should always have in your contract is who is party to the contract. This is the people involved in the contract, your suppliers, depending on which strategy you decided to use as your market access strategy. Then number two, you should have conditions of the contract's validity, definitely. Then you should have the goods that you'll provide and make sure you state the exact goods you provide so that nobody has any confusion as to maybe you were supposed to bring this, maybe your goods are supposed to be packaged, maybe your goods are supposed to be pre-packaged and packaged here. You have to be very, very, very careful and very, very precise. Then number four, the purchase price of the goods and the terms of delivery, inspection, and payment. This is extremely important because if you don't have your inspection well done, your goods might be sent back from the ports. This has happened to a number of exporting farms trying to export, and it actually deters them from trying to do it again. So again, I'll repeat, you should have the terms of delivery, inspection, and payment on your contract. the purpose for title transfer, if there will be a title transfer, any warranty and or maintenance terms and conditions. This covers you just in case your things are your goods and something happens to them. You can be able to get back to the contract, and it's going to be a guide when it involves in litigation in case or a breach, or if you ever unfortunately fall under this. So, who is responsible for obtaining import and export licenses? This is also very important. Who is responsible for paying taxes? This is important since many African countries, you either pay taxes just once, but when you're dealing with the US, you have the federal tax, then you have the state tax, and you should be very careful to make sure in your contract it states exactly who is paying the contract and how you're going to make this payment of the taxes. And any contract security requirements such as bank letters or guarantee. This actually also helps you because it protects you as well as protecting the buyers here. Number 10, the course of action in the event of buyer default or cancellation. This is to protect you from buyers who bail out on maybe a supply. It's important because if you have it in the contract, you can request payment or some course of action against any buyer who has been delinquent. Then 11, we have provision for independent mediation or arbitration to solve disputes, including where dispute resolution would occur. This is important, and it will be talked about more when we're looking at the law and financial compliances. This is to protect you, the exporter, and your buyer in case you have any confrontations. And if it was in your contract and it's well articulated and well stated as to how you're going to deal with any disputes, it actually helps in the process. Then the contract completion date. Sometimes you might forget to do this, but it would be perfect to write it so that there are no if, buts, or questions about a solid contract. And another thing is, if you have a solid export contract, it also shows the buyers that you're exporting to here in the United States, how business savvy you are, and how very diligent you are in your work, and they might refer you to other people and definitely will work with you again. Having all these T's and Q's covered in your contract gives your buyer confidence in your business practices. Then I have one slide here that things that are noteworthy. The first one is export contracts are more susceptible to dispute. That is exactly why I gave you those 12 points to try and make sure you have them in your export contract. There's usually more points in the export contract depending on exactly what you're exporting. So you also need to have to do your due diligence and make sure you understand your products and how your products export to the United States. Then there's the basic provision for a contract on the sale of goods is that you, the seller, will transfer ownership of goods to the buyer in return for payment. Another point is the rest of the contract specifies the terms and conditions for doing this. And if the contract involves licensing proprietary information or technology, the language around the licensing rights must be precise. This is something that I personally insist on every contract, not just proprietary information or technology. Having precise language actually helps you as a buyer in case there's any disputes. And since you're going to be a foreigner disputing companies in the United States, they have been working here and they know how to go about their laws, and they'll definitely have lawyers and whatnot. So I would suggest if you're trying to export to the United States to also make sure you try to do a bit more of due diligence on your part and have precision in your contract language. So here we have Psycho, a success story. Psycho is a very, I decided to go with them as today's success story because their marketing strategy is very, very simple but very, very effective in the US market. They are handbag fashion industry, handbag, shoes, straps, and um, fabric company based in Uganda. They appreciate the opportunity presented by AGOA and GSP, since some of their projects don't fall under AGOA, but they do still fall under the GSP program. So I quoted them where they say fair trade and socially conscious fashion can be powerful agents of social change by empowering women in Africa and all over the world. When you support fair trade, you're voting with your dollars for a more beautiful world. Seiko has this website that is extremely eye catching. They know their target market is women and they go after them hard. They don't have any like buildings or whatnot set up in the States, but they do use catalogs and they do use the internet a lot and some subsidiaries to sell into the United States. They started as a group to assist young girls go to college, since they were based in a place in Uganda where there's intelligent young girls who never used to go to college due to lack of funding. And I just wanted to really highlight them due to as I mentioned earlier, their marketing strategy and their whole mission, and the fact that they're an expanding business. It's amazing to see such businesses using AGOA and very excited about it and hoping that it'll get extension and more articles will be added to the already 3,000 plus articles that are in it. So I would implore you to go and look at their website just to see how their marketing strategy has worked for them and to see how it's good, how fast they've been growing under AGOA. For more information, you can reach us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And these are some of the useful resources, but we'll also be forwarding you some additional resources depending on the question and answers and um, any other discussions we'll have after this. So I will hand the mic over to Vuyo so he can give us a closing remark before we go to the Q&A. Thank you.
Morning. This is Christine Martey-Ochola again. I don't know if maybe we are unable to hear Vuyo. So, I can pick up and Vuyo, when you're able to connect with us, I'll pass the mic back on to you. Thank you, Sheila, so much for just walking through, some of the granular stuff one has to do as they look to enter any market, really. And for us as a chamber, some of the ways in which we can support your work as you look to take advantage of AGOA to expand your businesses, whether you're a US business that is looking to source products pretty reasonably from the African continent, or an African company that's looking to export into the US market. We definitely have members that are US based and also based in Africa, and would encourage you to consider joining the chamber as you work through strategies for building your business. Um, it's really important to look at the scope of work that is engaged as you look at some of these joint partnerships with companies across the Atlantic either way, because many times there are misunderstandings in what was expected and to what extent. That communication is something that at the chamber we help facilitate when businesses feel they need it, because as you all know, if you've done international business, um, business language varies depending on the country, depending on if you're in the US, just depending on the state. And so clarifying the scope of work and being very, very specific, having everything written, ratified, checked um, by experts in the field, and then moving on to the next step is critical. getting guidance on some of the actionable market analyses and business development planning is also important because, as you all know, doing business varies depending on one's geographic location, depending on the expectations, as Sheila mentioned, some of the legal frameworks, um, packaging frameworks, labeling of products and things such as that. So, based on what type of product you may have and what direction you want your business to go, getting very specific guidance on how to enter these markets and then also how to develop and grow your business is key. Seeking contacts for your prospects and also for your partnerships is essential in being successful in doing any kind of international business. So many times uh, businesses, will find folk online and say, well, it looks like this person group looks credible. Let's source whatever raw material from there, or maybe some kind of value added material, and see how we can grow our business. Having a clear understanding of whom you're communicating with, um, and having a credible path to the contacts that you would be uh, fostering to have partnerships with is I mean, I cannot say it enough how important it is to be sure of whom it is you're communicating with. Now, of course, one can never say they're 100% sure, but at least at the chamber, what we've done is we work with companies, organizations to try and make that as strong as possible, as clear as possible, to protect the businesses that we support in their strategies of expanding their businesses, especially across the Sub-Saharan and then the U.S. Markets. Um, the chamber can assist you as you seek to execute your plan. And we have multiple groups that can support directly from the chamber, or even consulting groups that are members of the chamber that would be more aligned with the needs of your business. Vuyo, I see your microphone. Are you with us? Are you available? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Vuyo, can you? Oh, wonderful. Do you want to take over from there? Did I miss anything? And I'll
No, I
go on
think
mute and you can pick up from here.
okay. One, I think thank you to everyone for joining the webinar. I think it is particularly exciting for us as trade and investment promotion folks to see that there is a growing interest in doing business with Africa. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we cover is to give a better sense, is to give an additional sense that, one, I think we are trying to make sure that people understand on the African side what the opportunities are for them to enter the US market. But likewise, I think the folks who are on the call are both African as well as American. And as such, there's also a need for us to understand that as an American business, AGOA can work to your advantage because essentially whatever you are sourcing, you'd be able to get those goods into your own operations duty free if they fall into the specific codes which Sheila has enumerated a little bit about and the chamber has more information on. So those are parts of at least those are some of the basics I think that we need to understand on both ends, that AGOA is a trade policy that ultimately works both for African businesses as well as American businesses. And one of the things that we have seen over time is that most of the business that is being conducted through AGOA is largely driven by oil and minerals to date. So there's a great deal of diversification that is still needed, and therefore there are more and more institutions that are welcoming SMEs getting more involved in accessing the benefits of AGOA from both sides of the Atlantic. So again, that is an open invitation. And given that we sit on the chamber side, for us, I think it's important for us to give you a better sense of what kinds of information do we collect, and then what do we do with that information that empowers your business to be successful as you make those inroads into the various markets. And I think Christine has covered a good bit of it in terms of For us, we make sure that you have a customized plan for how we will achieve your specific goals. And that's why I think on the slide that we're on, there's a bit about, let's talk about the specific scope of work so we understand specifically what your objectives are, and we can then collectively develop a plan that is actionable, that you can actually follow through with our support in order to get to the results that are desired. We will welcome, I think, any questions that you have on here. So please feel free to jump in using the chat window on the bottom right hand screen, and folks will connect. For the chamber, so the chamber provides the traditional suite of services, and Sheilah and Christine have already walked you through most of those. Additionally, we ensure that members of our chambers are also getting the visibility and also networking to ensure that you're able to actually drive your businesses even further. So, for instance, when there are details, so the presentation assumes that you are very good at the business development side in terms of both the developing the strategy as well as implementing, in terms of getting some level of market analysis or market research, and then also what's your ultimate commercialization strategy overall for getting into the different markets. So if you happens to be that those are things that you are not, your business is not particularly well versed at, the chamber can provide some services, and then all of the different consulting firms that are a part of the chamber are also able to provide those additional services. Since we are talking about AGOA and there is some focus on getting more and more agribusiness through it, we thought it would be useful for us to highlight one of our members, Bear Mountain Orchards, which is out in Pennsylvania. So it's it is centrally located on the eastern seaboard, and one of the things that they do is they export apples. So from Granny Smith to Golden Delicious, which is my favorite, into all these different spots. So one of the things that we do is one, assist in making sure that those exports are going to the specific markets that need them, and then two, they happen to have temperature controlled granaries that they are leasing out to companies that want a point of distribution on the eastern seaboard. So companies that are taking advantage of AGOA, getting their products to at least a central warehousing space, or in this case the granaries, and then moving from that. So we want to highlight at least a few of the things that are going on, and also for you to get a better sense that as hopefully members of the chamber in the future, there are numerous opportunities which we use to market the work that you are doing as well. And I think with that, I would like to thank Sheilah in particular for all the work that she's done in putting this together and delivering some of this content. And I think we would welcome questions that we can field. And Sheilah and Christine, I think we're back.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sheilah, back again. Thank you so much for all the interest that you've had on this webinars and the ones that were there before. I just would like to let everybody know that all the participants are going to get the PDF version of the webinar today and the first webinar that we had before. And I can see the chat is very, very active, and there's a couple of very important questions coming out. What I can tell everybody is, since all the participants have their different needs from the chamber, is that you contact us on the contact information that we've given you, since we can have private meetings with all of you individually, and we can discuss all your needs further, since some of them are pretty detailed, and we can see how we partner up from here on the end. So other than that, if we have any questions on the presentation.
This is Christine. I wanted to touch base on a question that Paulson had. Sheila, maybe you could mute just so that we don't hear the background. Okay, thanks. So, Paulson had asked about, maybe having a three-tier, developing a three-tier business where he's looking at potentially cars, a boutique, and the electronics business, and was wondering about insights on that. Paulson, some of the thoughts that come to mind, and as Sheila mentioned, it may require a little bit more of a detailed conversation. But with cars, for example, some of the things you want to look at is, what side of the road are people driving on? What types of cars are you looking at? Are you looking at used cars or brand new cars? If they're used cars, you may need to get in touch with, I believe it's the Road Safety Council in Nigeria, so that they can give you the specifications of the types of cars that they accept, the age of the cars that they accept. Certain countries can only accept cars that, if they're used cars, that is, that are, I believe, 3 years old. Others accept 5, others accept 7. So it really just depends on, what Nigeria has put in place in terms of the types of cars that they accept. Um, for boutiques, again, I'm presuming you're looking at a clothes boutique. Would you be looking at very niche products or kind of broad spectrum products? Um, in the clothing industry, of course, there's always a lot of opportunity, but that's where it becomes really critical to understand the Nigerian market. Uh, the buyers, there's all tiers of buyers. There are those who are extremely sophisticated, and then there are those who are just, glad to get a nice outfit. And so, if you're looking at boutiques, you may want to ask the question, where would it be located? Are you looking at Lagos, Abuja? Um, which socioeconomic income bracket would you be targeting, and so on. So there's quite a bit of market research that you may need to do there. In the electronics business, again, it depends on what types of electronics. I will tell you that a lot of sub-Saharan Africa tends to look at the East for electronics. And so where you source your electronics will be key, so that you can compete, at least from a pricing perspective. Um, and so I think, as you mentioned earlier, there are multiple layers of discussion there, and we could take it, offline. But I thought to just touch on those in case that overlaps with some of the questions some of our other participants had. There is a huge uh, buying power in Africa. The middle class is growing tremendously. And, sometimes people look at, a one-way type of export where they say, well, uh, let's get products out of Africa and sell them in the US market. As a simple example I'm going to use is, um, let me pick on jeans. I mean, I chatted on it a little bit earlier. You'll find folk who make jeans, garment factories that make jeans in Kenya, for example. Those jeans come in as Jodishi jeans that are sold in JC Penney, Macy's, Kohl's, or whatever. And then you find that the African buyers want to buy specifically out of Macy's and JC Penney, and then those products get sent back to Africa. So, understanding the the buyer is also extremely key, and you might find that you have a ping pong kind of trade where you have your raw materials or partially value added materials coming out of the continent, and then it comes back into the US. It has that extra layer added to it, and then it goes back. And that's where some of these joint ventures that Sheila alluded to earlier become important, because you could set up a pretty sophisticated business and take advantage of the needs of especially the growing middle class in sub-Saharan Africa. I think for U.S. businesses, it's exciting to really consider taking advantage of AGOA, because many companies are not even aware that multiple of the things that they source from the continent could come in under an AGOA provision. So, for Paulson, you are kind of looking at it from, a reverse perspective, from the US into Nigeria, but you may want to ask, what are some of the things that are coming out of Africa that can actually help your business as you also look to build in Africa. Maybe I've spoken too much, but hopefully that was helpful to you, and we can pick some of the specifics up on offline.
I think there was also a question around whether or not the chamber has a list of logistics companies and shipping companies. And generally speaking, we do develop those lists. And one of the things is we would have to get a better sense of specifically what kind of product are you shipping, what volume are you shipping, because different shippers have various requirements. Likewise with freight forwarders, depending on what specifically your business does. So yes, that certainly is information that you can always reach out. One of the easiest ways, you can always either email Sheila, and I would suggest probably also copy info@ssachamber.org, because that way, if somehow you have forgotten to put the H in Sheila, or one of those, there's some sort of misspelling, we're still able to triage that information and get it to her for a response. I hope that answers your question.
This is Christine again. Gladys had asked a question around, how does the chamber, I want to make sure I catch the question correctly. How does the chamber support maybe African diasporans that are seeking to do business in Africa? And Gladys, what I meant there is a lot of the time the specificity of the need is important. So I gave you maybe what was a little bit more of a generic answer. For example, the question that Paulson raised around seeking to enter the Nigerian market, if we have a diasporan who understands a market or wants to understand a market, or they have a product that they really want to push into a given African market, what we do is we work with them around a market strategy. If they need to meet with if they have to do a trip maybe to that given country, we help coordinate all of those trips um, to ensure that they're meeting the right people. Just because a person may be from a given country, I'll give an example. I am originally from Kenya. Just because I'm from Kenya, it doesn't necessarily mean that I understand doing business in Kenya unless I've done business in Kenya before. And even if I've done business in Kenya before, if initially I was in the energy market and then being a serial entrepreneur, I decided to get into the food market or the agribusiness market, I may not necessarily have the correct networks. So what the chamber does is it works with not just diasporans, but really any individual or company that's seeking to enter that market and specifically build a plan of how to be successful there. And arranges for meetings. We typically will join the company of interest in their trade mission and work through even contracting type of discussions if the need is there. So getting a good understanding of the needs, developing a good needs assessment, and then developing a strategy around that given business and the country it's seeking to enter is key. There are scenarios where we have actually advised businesses not to consider a given country or a given type of business in a certain space because the market is just not ready. So that we definitely have an advisory piece within the chamber where we'd work with you and kind of determine the market readiness for your products and for yourself as a company anyway, based on your uh, volumes, as Vuyo had mentioned earlier. I hope that gives you a little bit more insight on how we work with all companies and definitely including diaspora-run companies. I don't know if Sheila or Vuyo
Well,
would like.
yeah, I was going to say, Paulson had another question, and we hope more of you who are on the line will actually take the opportunity to write your questions in so that we can answer them more specifically. Paulson had a question around whether, yeah, I guess you're having an interest in cocoa from Nigeria. And the comment I wanted to add to it, I think I'm interested in also importing cocoa from Nigeria, is there's a lot of cocoa that comes out of Cote d'Ivoire that goes for basically for a lot of the chocolate manufacturers, the Mars Incorporated and the Hershey's of the world. So not only I think are we able to assist in terms of figuring out specifically the Nigeria piece, but also there are multiple areas from which one is able to source, and we are always willing to sit down and kind of work out how best to help you achieve what you're looking to do. I think on AGOA in general, I think it is an exciting space. I think there's a lot of energy that is being expended on the AGOA platform, and the part that has been missing has really been the engagement of small and medium-sized enterprises. So I think as those kinds of businesses, I think it's important for you to get engaged because the policymakers have ensured that the framework is there for you to actually take advantage. Now, and also, I think on the Africa side, there are tons of export promotion agencies that are there also to work in collaboration with us all to ensure that there is more business that is being transacted on both sides. So if you have an idea that, or you have a business that is particularly well versed at something that you think is also transferable or applicable within the African space, I think it's worthwhile having that conversation because you'll be surprised at the infrastructure that is already in place to ensure that those exports and imports are actually working seamlessly from the dock all the way through freight forwarding and final delivery.
Um, Thanks. I wanted to touch on, I think, a question from Gladys where she had asked if there are any fees involved with the chamber. I'd recommend that if you go to our website, um, we have a simple fee structure that we use for organizations and individuals, and it's an annual membership process, and there's different tiers. So I'd recommend that maybe you could go in there and see where your company falls within those tiers. And then we definitely have a form a document that you can send our way. And that now gives us an opportunity to determine how best we can support your company needs. So again, if you go to our website, click on membership, and you'll see a drop down that will get you to the details around what level to join at.
While some folks are typing, let me ask something slightly unconventional. If you could all do me a favor and just type a sentence about what your interest is in AGOA, whether you're an individual company or you're a trade promotion, I think that gives us a better sense of what are the other thoughts in industry that are driving activity on this end. So we'd appreciate that. Hi, Martin. If you look under membership, the fee structure is based on the size of your company. I'm not on the website now. I think membership starts as low as 1,000, and they go up depending on the size of your organization. So if you look under membership, you'll see, for instance, that if you are an entrepreneur, a small business that's basically making under $2 million, it's $1,000 membership, $1,000 annual membership, and for nonprofits that are doing under 5 million, it's the same, and then it goes up based on the revenue that one is generating. And again, I think to the point that I had mentioned earlier, it's always important for us that are not, it's not a general membership, it's a very specific and specialized and customized membership. So that second point that is on the slide now is very important to us in terms of making sure what is the specific scope of work, so that we are not just providing you general information, but actually providing you information that is specific to your business, to your industry, and to the objectives that you have within that industry. I hope that helps.
So I think we're getting some pretty good, you know, tidbits here on who's with us. And sometimes with webinars, it's kind of sticky because you don't always know who's in the room and what their interests are. So, Vuyo, I'm glad you kind of reached out to the room to get an idea of whom we're with. And we see that, like Shiree's has just launched a tourism promotion and market development company. Um, and you're looking for to be an intermediary service to African businesses in the hospitality and boutique goods sector. Um, and I guess the question is, are you looking at the whole continent, or are there certain areas, certain countries in which you have more interest? There's some, for example, I just came from Namibia, and I mean, kid you not, there was a hotel with the rooms built inside the sand dunes. And I kept thinking, I mean, it was amazing, out of this world. And I kept thinking, who's out there actually marketing these opportunities? So, Sheree, I mean, there's so much out there. And I mean, I'm sure we can have a conversation on how best to maybe you can position yourself as you grow your business. I think someone Jacko had Jacko. Did I pronounce your name right, or is it Yako? I'm not so sure of Jacko. So please excuse me if I mangled your name. But you're a journalist, and I think what you're doing is really exciting because on the African side, not everybody is aware of how vast the US market is and how large the opportunity is. And so having a service where, Africa can be branded positively, which is something we haven't talked much about during today's session, and branded as a location for doing business or getting high quality products is important, and we'll definitely go on to your website and see what you've been doing. If you want to have a conversation with us outside of this session, please feel free to reach out, and we would love to be able to give you some tidbits that you can use to strengthen the work that you're doing.
I was
Thank
also
you.
going to say,
Okay, Vuyo.
I was only going to say, I was also going to mention that Jacko happens to be a very good golfer who enjoys a lot of golf courses around Cape Town. So for those who are in the tourism area, that's a
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Sheila, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to thank all the participants for coming in, for the ones who are typing in and the others who are just listening in. Again, I'd like to reiterate what my co-presenters have been saying, which is please come to our website, follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, look at our blogs, and we'll still be talking. We have much more than just businesses that we do, which is very interesting. And I can see some people who would be interested in other aspects of the chamber. I'd also like to just make a quick comment about AGOA and the atmosphere that's going on right now following the commencement of the 2013 forum. The one thing that the ministers in Africa and the Congress and the administration has done is actually have a legit conversation on extending the the act, the time limitation on the act, and also they're talking about adding on to the things, goods and service. I mean, goods that can be covered within AGOA. And what I would like to speak to businesses dealing in exports from here to Africa or from Africa to here is that we also need to act as an AGOA community and try very hard to make sure that all businesses are listening in on goods coming from Africa or going to Africa, and the perception of the quality of goods coming from Africa should be changed into thinking that the goods are better, the goods are organic. And this takes a lot of work from everybody, not just the organizations that promote the trades, but also from the businesses themselves. So this is something for everyone to think about and to work hard on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sheila, and we'll get. And I think that we're getting to the top of the hour. We again just wanted to thank everybody for joining us. If there are no additional questions, we'll be sure to send you the PowerPoint slides, as Sheila had mentioned. I believe Gladys had asked if it's possible to network amongst one another, and we will send out, when we send out the PowerPoint, we'll send you email addresses for those who made them available so that you can communicate with one another and expand your networks. Sheila, I believe we'll be having another session on AGOA, part 3, but several people have asked about the first webinar, and we will do a rerun on that and invite you to it, because that was really kind of the beginning of the nuts and bolts of how to um, utilize AGOA. And with that, again, we want to thank you for making time this morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are, for joining us. And if you have additional questions that you did not share through the chat, please feel free to send them out to Sheila via her email, which was posted earlier, Sheilah Njalaleh at ssachamber.org, or info at ssachamber.org, and we'll be sure to respond to them. Thank you.